Welcome back, Multifamily Forward. JC, AG, also known as John Carlson, Adam Greco. A bonus episode regarding the vice presidential debate from a couple days ago, or depending on when you're watching, just as of recently. We promise to be unbiased in our views here, and wanted to share a little bit of insight as far as what we took from the debate. First off, John, how you feeling? How you doing?
Feeling great, buddy.
Ready to go? Let's dive in here. So let's just talking from the top. Overall, what did you feel the general takeaways were from both sides?
Well, I wrote an interesting note from the Wall Street Journal. It was Tim Waltz and J.D. Vance, and it said, the folksy dad in plaid versus the hillbilly Marine turned Yale grad.
Wow.
I thought that was interesting. I felt like America's been yearning, I've been yearning for a substantive and cordial debate, a conversation. I think it lacked the unpleasantness of what we've seen in the past with other folks debating. So, overall, I felt like, the actions of the two vice president candidates was what I would expect from someone that's going to take on a role in that capacity. Yes, absolutely.
And they agreed with each other in certain aspects throughout the debate.
Overlapping things that, you would expect as Americans who care deeply about their country, although they see different pathways.
Yeah,
it was something that I enjoyed watching.
That's great. So let's look at this from our industry within, not only just for us as property managers, owners, operators, but also let's look at it from the renter side, because it's ultimately what's most important, the general public, the American people. So what key areas from the Harris platform to the Trump platform did you see was most significant for our industry?
Yeah, again, lens focused on multifamily investors, renters, et cetera. So, that comes down to a lot of things that are related to taxation and regulation and housing policies. So that's kind of where I've focused in my notes. So forgive me, I'm going to pull from my notes.
No.
So, as you probably heard from Mr. Walls, the Harris-Walls plan is to construct 3 million new housing units to address the nationwide housing shortage. There's going to be some tax incentives included in that in terms of who's building those homes, to include some first-time homebuyer incentives. So I don't know what that really looks like, but that's what they're sharing. And then it also includes a $40 billion fund to support innovative methods for local jurisdictions and governments to help more affordable housing in those areas. And then she mentioned the Stop Predatory Investing Act. So I think they're leaning in on not allowing, I'll say Wall Street investors to buy homes in chunks. So that's another angle for the Harris piece. They did mention online, at least, not in the debate, preventing the algorithmic facilitation of rental housing cartels act, which sounds really bad.
Yeah.
This goes back to the DOJ suing RealPage for price fixing. Anyone that understands multifamily or that's been in the space that has used any algorithmic models, we don't, but it's a very misconstrued angle. There's no collusion. There's no price fixing. It's really a vote-getting mechanism. So I know they're going down that pathway. And then, of course, and probably most of the audience has heard this, the $25,000 down payment support for first-time buyers. Again, I think that's an inflationary type mechanism. So, give an incentive here, it's going to increase
who pays for that in the long run, right?
So,
yeah, exactly.
So that's the Harris proposals. Trump's less clear in terms of and transparency around what he's going to do specifically, but for sure he is hellbound on eliminating regulations, specifically for home builders. So we know that's a piece of his regulations, and then that ties back to the TCJA, or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017, which includes lowering corporate taxes and also included creating the opportunity zones that has created an economic boon across the country in terms of certain areas that were underdeveloped for low-income areas. So I think it's two different tiers, and we'll kind of round out to that ending.
Okay.
Let's go taxes. specifically. So I'm just going to scroll up to my notes for that. Two very different programs in place in terms of how they're approaching this. So, Harris keeps talking about fair share and really supported policies around taxing unrealized gains in terms of capital gains, which, if you understand anything about taxes, gains, profits, doesn't make any sense. Imagine for the viewers, if you bought a home 10 years ago for $100,000, and today it's worth $200,000, but you didn't have a capital event, meaning you didn't sell that house.
Right.
Now you're required to pay taxes on that artificial gain.
100,000. Right.
Just because it's underwriting at that number. So you have to come out of pocket with money to pay for that gain, even though you've not actually had a capital event and taken that cash out. So that would destroy the investments in terms of housing and investments across the country. If we jump into kind of their proposal from a tax perspective, I just pulled off the policy comparison from the American Century Investments. So in terms of corporate taxes specifically, Harris wants to raise corporate taxes to 28% from 21%. She wants to raise the corporate alternative minimum tax, the CAMT, to 21% from 15%. Individuals, she's now saying she wants to eliminate income taxes on tips and Social Security benefits, even though she was the one that voted for it in the Senate.
Correct.
She was the final vote that broke the tie to pass that actual law. Trump would like to reduce the corporate tax rate to 15% and or 20% from 21%, depending on brackets, and then permanently extend the capital expenditure depreciation rules that were enacted in 2017, and then individually, once again, extend the tax rates established in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then the only thing else I would add is that Harris also wants to increase the top individual income tax rate from 37 to 39.9 or 39.6%. So again, it's a tale of two policies. Do you decrease taxes to improve investment and try to produce more economic gains, or you just tax and regulate? And that's really what this comes down to.
Polarizing views.
And then regulation, deregulation. So I think when you look at the policies as a whole, there's been a lot of additional regulation that's occurred under the Biden-Harris. There was a House Committee on Oversight and Accountability report that showed the Biden-Harris administration imposed a historic $1.7 trillion new federal regulatory costs over the last 3 years. So that's burdensome in terms of doing business. It's higher prices, more difficult marketplace dynamics because of that regulation. Trump's more along the lines of deregulation, so allowing the private sector to do what they do, and that goes across a myriad of things from housing to energy, et cetera. So he's really trying to create less regulation, less burdensome, red tape on private citizens, private businesses. So that's what it really comes down to. And I have a quote, and you guys can think what that means for you as an investor or a renter. But I'm going back to Milton Friedman and the great economist. He says, "I'm in favor of cutting taxes under any circumstances and for any excuse, for any reason, whenever it's possible, because I believe the big problem is not to tax too little, it is to spend too much." And today we're sitting at a $35 trillion debt load on the U.S., well over 100% GDP at this point. So we have to solve this, whether it's the left side or the right side. I'm thinking about how do we correct that burdensome debt and really get back to fiscal responsibility. So those are kind of the two sides of this. It's up to you to vote. You have the power to do so in a few weeks, but it's concerning if there's a heavy tax burden, heavy regulation on the pro-development of multifamily investors, and that will, of course, I believe, feed into more costly dynamics for renters. So, I would imagine if there's, as we always know, if there's less supply long term, you're going to see rents go up. So this boom in construction has helped relieve, the temporary boom in supply has obviously translated to lower rents. So we'll see what happens in November, but that's where we sit.
So I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I think I might just right now,
Please.
just real quick. So we're going back to how does this affect us as property management, as a property management company and operator, owners, investors, and then on the other side, how does this affect our renters, right?
Sure.
Most importantly, given that we are already seeing supply and demand 101, right? We have a lot of supply over the next 4 quarters, definitely going to be hitting some record numbers. During those 4 quarters, we, of course, are going to have a switch in leadership. Come November, it's going to happen one way or another, right?
Sure.
So if Kamala Harris is voted in compared to Donald Trump being voted in, does that change our economic look here in the Valley at all? One way or another? Does that change what we're going to see here in Arizona, I guess is what I'm asking.
It'll change in every state because a lot of the things I just mentioned are at the federal level.
Yeah.
So corporate taxes, regardless of what state you are in doing business, that will affect you. So as NMHC posted, I believe it was last year, the National Multi-Housing Association Council, they put together a summary of what regulations, the cost to build in terms of, regulation, burdensome delays, all of those things. And it equated to about 40%, I believe, of the total cost of building units. So if that increases, guess what happens? Supply probably goes down because less deals pencil,
Right.
Meaning makes sense to develop. And then also rents will probably go up because of those things. So those are factors that we have to think about when we go to the voter ballot box.
Right. So let's say this, to round this out for us, very important to vote, of course, right? How important is it to take out the emotional piece that all of us are probably feeling? Because it's 2 opposite sides, 2 opposite ways of looking at what is going to benefit our country, middle class, everything.
Sure.
How easy is it for most people right now, given just the conflict between both? How easy will it be for people to take away that emotional side and really vote based on track records or what they claim to want to change moving forward once they're elected?
I don't think it's easy at all. I think you have several influences. It's a divided country. You have social media. You have your friend base. So, for me, I personally, and I'll just share this with everybody, I really never think anymore in terms of left or right or blue or red.
Yeah.
I'm really looking at the fundamental policies, the things that have worked historically, really focused in on, I believe tax policy, codes, regulations, all of those things that really impact businesses and small businesses specifically because they are the true engine of this economy. So if you're undermining the ability for small businesses to prosper and grow and hire new employees, that's a problem. So I think, you need to keep your emotions in check like anything and really look at the data. The cool thing is, for once, this is very rare, right? You have a track record. So you understand, despite the rhetoric, what Trump did or didn't do over those 4 years because he's been in office already.
Right.
And Harris, even though she wasn't president, she's sitting vice president, number 2 in line. She's has a track record for the last 3.5 years. So you really get an understanding of how both sides play and execute their policies and what really they're trying to accomplish from their lens. So there's a lot of information, more so than ever, in terms of that versus just saying I'm going to. What have you actually done? Even
more of a reason as for us as the American people, just you have to do your due diligence. You have to. You can't just go off of that emotional piece.
Sure.
And it's really easy to do, unfortunately, right now, right? On top of the rhetoric. John, thank you as always. Hey, a little fist bump. I like this. There we go. For everything. The knowledge, just everything going back as far as track records. Well, we always appreciate the insight and the education.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you again. Multifamily Forward, presented by Mark Taylor Consulting.